Okay, thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ton. I'm a knowledge management consultant, and I work with companies, usually on communities of practice these days. I'm an independent consultant, and I want to talk to you today about how my life, my work, my learning has changed radically in the past 8 years or so. And I'm not an educator, I'm not a teacher, but I went to school, and like anybody else who went to school, I loosely hold strong opinions about education, and I want to share a couple of them with you today. When I looked at the program last week, I was sort of surprised to find I was put in a panel on Gen Y, because I didn't know that beforehand. They invited me to speak, and then I saw it's about Gen Y, and I have a big difficulty with this label, because I think Gen Y as a label, it says more about the people labeling people Gen Y than the people actually labeled does. And so to me it seems like if you label a group, which is not a demographic, but if you label a group Gen Y, you're actually saying, I'm not trying to change, I'm saying this group has changed. Well, in fact, the world has changed. And there's a group of children and youth that are more visibly adapting to those changes in the world than we maybe are. So Gen Y, I find it a hard label, but I'll stretch the definition of it, just like Harold Ellison did this morning when he said, I'm a member of Gen Y, I'm just in a baby boomer body. And stretching that definition a little bit further, I want to introduce you to 3 specimens of Gen Y tonight, and they're on this slide. On the top left is my niece, Anna-Marie. She's 10 years old. And in the picture, she's unwrapping a globe that she got for her birthday, her 9th birthday last year, from my dad, her granddad. And when she unwrapped the globe, she spun it around and pointed to Boston and to London and said, I have lived there, which is by itself not miraculous, because my sister and her husband took her there. But then she added a very significant little sentence and said, I know people there. And she does. She went to kindergarten in Boston, the first 2 years of primary school in London, then returned to the Netherlands. And she's still in touch with her classmates that she had in Boston and in England. And they exchange gifts with Christmas. They send each other emails, they chat online, they meet up in Habbo Hotel. And she has a full-blown international network at the age of 10. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I went on holiday for 3 weeks in the summer to Austria, for instance, I would play with the kids that were there, and we promised we would ride, but we never did. And then returned the next year for another 3 weeks of playing at the same site. That wasn't an international network. She has. The other specimen is at the top right. That's my mother-in-law, Fenneke. She's 65, and last year she retired as a librarian, being extremely frustrated by her colleagues in her profession that didn't have the ambition, did not want to change their profession, and saw everything that came across the internet only as a threat. She experimented with tools. She's somewhat of a hobby photographer. She teaches other people how to work with digital cameras and how to alter the pictures and how to share them online. And she's amazed by the type of relationships that she builds by sharing her own pictures online. She owns 4 laptops because she wants to keep ahead of what's happening hardware-wise and different operating systems, because she has to teach other people how to use them. So I think she's part of Gen Y. And then the other specimen is myself, and I know myself pretty well, so it's easier to talk about myself as an example. So I'll dig a bit deeper here. 8 years ago, as now, I was a news junkie. I was subscribed to 2 national papers, 1 local, multiple magazines. I watched every newscast on television and all the in-depth interviews that came afterwards. And that's how I made sense of the world. That's how I kept track of what was happening. That changed. I started blogging in 2002, and then I installed a little thing called a feed reader. And now I track 300 people, more or less. It changes over time. And I track everything they share online. All their opinions, the photos, the bookmarks, the software they're using, where they're traveling, where they are currently. I track everything. And that's my biggest source of news. I don't watch the news anymore. I canceled all the newspaper subscriptions. I don't watch TV, don't listen to the radio. I follow this, because these are people that I know, so I know in what kind of context they are sharing their information. And I use them to filter out what's happening in the world. They create a daily collage for me of what is happening. And these are all people that I know, so they're in communities that I'm part of or that I'm close to. And I don't read all that stuff because there's thousands of entries over the course of a couple of days. So mark everything read is my friend, that button. I don't read all that stuff, but I look at the patterns. What's important to the communities that I'm part of? And if it's important to them, it might be important to me. And they filter for me. They point me to stuff. That's how I keep up with the news, and that's how I learn, because they point in all kinds of different directions to interesting stuff, and I follow up on that. And I have my conversation partners right there to work with. So that's my source of learning and my source of news. But using that network as a filter, I sort of started working into other fields and other aspects of my life as well. Because I pull all that information in, and I'm in a network, I have to share a lot as well. And I won't show you all these tools because you've all seen them before, but I share every little tidbit that I find somehow worthwhile sharing with a couple of people that I know. So where am I? Where will I be? What do I think? What do I do? What do I say I do, which is Twitter. So I share a whole lot, and that's needed because if I don't share in my network, I'm not visible. And if I'm not visible, nobody will share with me. They will route around me. I'm a dark node in the network if I don't share. And I also need to share because I'm also sharing what I think of what they were sharing with me. So I'm creating feedback loops. And those feedback loops are important for me, in turn, to see the patterns in what they are doing. I need the feedback to get the learning going for myself. My clients, they don't share a whole lot. They have email and they have mobile phones. But even they are changing. 8 years ago, I used to spend hours and hours in meetings where we had an agenda with 12 points and you would only cover 5 in the first 2 hours and then postpone the last 7 to the next meeting and so on and so on. I'm never in those meetings anymore. And that's because all the basic levels of collaboration, information sharing, task coordination, task allocation, is done in other channels. And if you ask my clients, they would say, I'm not big on internet, I just use email and my mobile phone. But they have significantly changed their behavior already. They put stuff they were doing in meetings into these other channels. And when we now meet up, we actually do stuff together. We create things. We write on a document, we create a plan, we brainstorm, we work things out. And we're actually actively involved with each other, which is a whole lot different from sitting in a circle and waiting until the chair says, okay, we're done, and see you next week. So my work changed as well. And it crept into my personal life as well, because if you're doing stuff with people that you know, and they're the source of your learning, they're the source of your information, and it's clients and friends and family, and everybody's in there, everybody is in your network, then there's no real distinction anymore between work and life. And so you end up celebrating your wife's birthday in August by organizing a conference. And you see little Alexander there in the middle of the picture. He's the son of a friend of ours. Big tip for everyone, bring your kids to conferences because it makes everybody in the room more human and every discussion in the room more valuable. And conference organizers, Sally, are you in here? Have somebody available to mind the children while the parents are speaking somewhere. I've been to a couple of international conferences now where they had actually a kindergarten downstairs where you could leave your kids and bring them up once you were done talking. And these kids, they transform the experience of a conference. Bring your kids to a conference. That was a sideline. And of course, we didn't just do the conference. We also had the normal party with drinks and barbecue. So over the course of 8 years, when I look at my professional work, everything changed. Where I get my information from, how I learn. I don't read any management books anymore because the authors are usually in the network. How I work with my clients, how I live at home, what I do in my spare time, everything changed because of two infrastructures. Mobile communications being the first and internet being the other. And they have three quantitative effects. They create lots of new connections, as they did for my niece. And we have more and more connections. You create a higher speed of change because there's more pathways for stuff to get at you, and there's a higher dynamics. That's why we build cities, to bring a lot of connections in one